Welcome back to the Mobalytics 9.15 Update and Q&A video. I'm your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty Isles, here to take you through all the changes and questions you had. As a disclaimer, I'd like to once again mention that we only update the normal list as of right now, as the high-low one wouldn't really have a big enough data set to make an update worthwhile at this point in time. Now, before I move on, I did promise that I would reveal which skill bracket the clips were from, and they're all Diamond Plus games, including some challenger ones with special guest appearance Bjergsen on Tristana, who died to that one Zed. Maybe that was the game that inspired him to try out Zed versus TL, but who knows. But either way, it doesn't matter because we're jumping right into the update. Let's start off with the top lane update, and our starting roster for S tier will remain the same with Garen, Urgot, Yorick, Kled, and Alawi. Alawi has maintained her S tier position and has been getting some hate lately due to how frustrating she can be to lane versus, so if you struggle versus her, I highly recommend you try out Swain, Teemo, and Jace as range counter picks, and Yorick, Tryndamere as melee champion to do well into her. Swain in particular is an underrated option into her. Since his buffs came in last patch, his win rate overall has gone up by 2%, making him a solid top lane choice in general, with the increased range on his Q, making it easier for him to harass low range champions like Tentacle Woman. As for the actual changes to the list, we have Yasuo just barely rising to B tier, as he has some good matchups into the flavor of the month pick Tristana, as well as other popular range picks like Vladimir, Teemo, Jace, and Gnar. Just avoid picking him into Renekton and you should be fine. Poppy, on the other hand, got removed from the list despite her buff, as it really didn't impact her that much, and we want to stray away from suggesting to main champions who are currently really only used as counter picks. Don't get me wrong, she's a good champion to have in your champion pool, just not to main. If you see an Aurelia or Riven though, go ahead, lock in the Poppy all day and watch them start fuming as they're not even able to play the game. The biggest change to the top lane list is without a doubt Malphite moving from B tier to A tier. After his buff on 9.15, Rockman went up by 2.5% win rate, easily allowing him to enter A tier. Not only is he a strong top laner in a meta dominated by a bunch of AD melee champions, but he is fantastic into immobile marksmen like Jinx and Jhin, who can't do anything when their flashes are down. And don't get me started about how much of a free win it is to play Malphite versus Kalista. Well, to be fair, most champions are a free win into Kalista and solo queue. Malphite just makes the Kalista regret all of her life decisions that led her to that point in time where she decided to play the game out and not dodge. Not to mention, you get an added bonus for picking him up in top lane, as he can be flexed to both mid and jungle currently. Despite the low play rates, he's actually performing pretty well stat-wise in terms of win rate in both those roles. Moving over to the jungle update S tier roster, we have, to no surprise, Vi, Amumu, Volibear, Master Yi, Jax, and Nunu. In A tier, we have no changes, but Kha'Zix was able to maintain his rank thanks to the buff to his Q, increasing his win rate by around 1.6%, which is really good considering his play rate also jumped up by 3% as well. Despite some people viewing this buff as a placebo buff, it greatly helped his clear speed and early dueling power, which is exactly what Kha'Zix needed in a meta where his early game was just very bad. In B tier, Grace also maintained his ranking thanks to his E armor buff, making his early skirmish and clear much stronger. Though his win rate only jumped up by around 1%, this buff was strong enough to spark longtime Grace players like Svenskeren, Peanut, and Tarzan to pick him up again, so if you were a Grace player, try him out too. Skarner though, to the horror of Captain Flowers, is being dropped to the graveyard during this patch update. It's not that he's a terrible jungler, it's mostly that he's just an okay jungler, and in a meta with such powerful jungle picks, being just okay isn't worth recommending. Worst of all, it brings me great sadness to see my beloved go-to jungler Evelynn drop off the list. She took a pretty big hit this patch, dropping around 2% win rate, landing her at 48%. I initially thought that this would be a minor nerf, so I queued up to test it out myself, thinking I would barely notice the lack of 10% CD refund. I was wrong, and it made such a big difference to her clear speed that now sometimes it's slow enough that you can't always finish 5 camps before Scuttle spawns, allowing you not to hit 6 as fast as possible. I guess I'll just need to change my secondary role to support so I can abuse a real stealth assassin like my main man, Money Man Pike. Oh, and before I move on, I must have been blind or something. I didn't see the last part of the script where Lee Sin got bust last patch, but as expected, we didn't see him do significantly better. Unlike Malphite, who got a big boost and is a fully fledged jungler now, as predicted, thanks to the bust last patch. Coming in with the S tier mid lane roster, we have Malzahar, Vel'Koz, Ahri, Fizz, and newcomer Sith Lord Swain, because he was definitely not inspired by Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars or the one-handed Anakin Skywalker. I wouldn't even be surprised if he had a hidden passive where he takes 1 extra damage when he doesn't have the high ground. At the beginning of the patch, we had predicted Swain to go to A tier thanks to the increased range on his Q, but his win rate spiked by around 2%, making him one of the highest win rate mid laners. With a short CD harass tool like Death's Hand getting an extra 100 range while being able to go through minions, it's just such a strong buff, with the current mid meta and solo queue being mostly mid-range burst mages like Ahri, or assassins like Fizz and Zed, allowing him to bully lane even easier. This buff isn't going to make him pick or ban in competitive though, because 100 range is nothing against champions like Corki, Azir, and Zoe who are killing you from a screen away, but it's worth a lot in solo queue, so I highly recommend picking him up because he can be flexed into 4 roles at the moment. The only other changes to the list will be Aatrox getting removed. Aatrox is someone that can be played mid lane if you really want to, like if you main him top for example, but we recommend you stay away from Aatrox mid if you don't main him already. The other change being someone I do recommend you main, and that's Cassio Snake Lady Pia, as she has reached A tier due to how amazingly helpful it is for her to be able to W at her feet versus assassin matchups. Personally, I've played her a couple of times since the changes, and I'll admit, her mana pool before the first recall sucks in a lot of matchups, and I'm not even sure she has the mana pool to even kill a lot of champions, but once you play for farm and get to tier, she is a major threat both in lane and in team fights. Bonus points is she can be flexed to top and bot lane. Personally, I feel like she's actually better suited for those roles because in top lane she has easier matchups into melees and she can scale without having to worry about roaming to skirmishes as often compared to mid lane. Before moving on to bot lane, I would like to go over some of the champion changes from last patch and their impact on them. Both Galio and Lissandra got some major win rate increases in mid lane, making them go from your trolling tier to I really wish you didn't pick them, but they aren't so bad, I'll dodge tier. While Syndra, Karma, and LeBlanc all had minor changes that no one actually cared about, and I'm here to tell you that you were right not to care about them because they had no impact on their win rates or play rates. For the bot lane S tier roster, we have Jinx, Sivir, and Jhin, with the only change to the list being Hewitt's pick of the patch Lucian being thrown back down from A tier to B tier. The buff to his R just really didn't help him out in terms of play rate or win rate. This of course won't stop anyone from actually picking Lucian, just like how it won't stop people from picking off-roll Ezreal and off-roll Lee Sin. But still, we here at Mobalytics try our best to make sure you have the best champion recommendations possible. We're even willing to put in a lot of time and effort to develop our new tier list feature, so go check it out whenever you need a reminder of what not to pick. Or drop by my stream at 1 PST PM every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I'll tell you live not to pick your 47% win rate Lucian or Ezreal. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, did this guy really just use up the entire bot lane section to plug his own stuff? Well, yeah, kind of, but in return, I'll recommend some fun duo combos to try out to make this stale bot lane meta a little more exciting while also getting you some LP. Please note these combos require a duo and comm, so I apologize if these don't apply to some of you. Recently, many aggro duos with Taric have started to rise up in solo queue. The prime example of this is Taric Pyke, but other combos with Taric and melee all-in champions like Yasuo, Aurelia, Echo, and Rengar are all viable too. The goal here is to use their mobility spells to secure a free stun with Taric E and then use all that extra armor and burst damage to destroy marksmen in the early laning phase because they can't deal with that in-your-face aggression. That's it for the bot lane section, and happy marksman hunting. Introducing the support S tier roster, we have Zyra, Brand, Janna, Nami, Pyke, and Soraka. Blitzcrank was doing amazing when he initially got his shield breaker mechanic on his R, but as people got used to playing versus him, mostly just enchanter players realizing they can't tank his hooks anymore, his win rate started to decline and he moved to A tier. Soraka on the other hand moves up from A tier to S tier thanks to the buff to her Q damage really making her laning phase way more oppressive. Both her win rate and play rate went up a good margin after the buff, making it one of the more successful ones this patch. Not to mention, Soraka is quite strong into some of the other S tier picks like Janna or even Pyke due to her silence being able to cancel his Q. I highly recommend picking her up at the moment because whenever Riot overbuffs her laning phase, she becomes an amazing solo queue pick that will have the enemy team calling out in alt chat at least once a game how they hate her ult because they lost a 1v1 because of it, or how much they hate her silence because it's super annoying. Welcome to our Q&A portion, where our first question is from someone who I believe their name is pronounced Katarina from YouTube, who asks, hey wait, why is Zed going down? Not even gonna talk about him, huh? I'll talk about him, it's no issue. So in patch 9.13, Zed was doing extremely well in both Diamond Plus and Masters Plus. Zed throughout his career has also been a very meta-dependent and matchup-dependent champion when it comes to how strong he is. Once 9.14 hit though, and then 9.15, he had a steady decline in both Diamond Plus and Masters Plus brackets. Normally using just one of these brackets isn't really going to be enough to tell what's actually happening because the data sample is so small, but if you use both of them over 2 patches and it's a downward trend, it's definitely going to be a safe bet that Zed is on the decline. Though I'm still not 100% certain, it's likely due to the shift in both support meta and mid meta. After 9.13, the top tier support picks can stuff Zed really easily, like Rakan, Thresh, and Albardo for example. While in mid lane, more and more matchups that he hates are coming into meta, like Swain and Kiana, who are very popular right now, while matchups he used to win, such as versus Cassio, or even some skill matchups like versus Fizz, TF, Katarina, are no longer severely in his favor thanks to new build innovations or kit changes. Fizz is way more tanky now, Cassiopeia can W her feet, which is really obnoxious for Zed when he tries to ultimate. Twisted Fate has that new AD build, and it goes on and on with new builds and innovations really hurting his matchups in the mid lane, which is why the Shadow Ninja is definitely on the decline. Our next question comes from Realm Knights on YouTube, who asks, this is the most inaccurate tier list. How is Vladimir B tier? We get this about Vladimir a lot since many other tier lists rank him higher. In my opinion, this is done just to appease the viewers, and there's no real basis for thinking he's some OP god level unbeatable champion, especially in mid lane. He is annoying to lane versus, yes. Yes, his pool is annoying, and yes, he is very hard to stop when ahead. But he is a late game scaling champion with no lane priority and no ability to skirmish in mid lane, who offers nothing when behind in a meta that is very fast paced, skirmish oriented, snowball oriented, and many of his most popular counter picks are really popular right now, like Cassiopeia, Malzabelter, and Swain, who are really strong right now too. This is very much a case of game trauma where players tend to remember the Vlad who 1v9'd and not the other 7 Vlads who did little to nothing to actually impact the game. This tends to be the reason why Zed and Yasuo's ban rates are extremely high as well. Our third question is from LolDestroyer 6.0 on Instagram, who asked, hey, Anivia is A tier in low elo and in high elo she is B tier. Can you explain why she isn't so good in high elo? Sure thing. So in low elo, she has some major tools that help her win consistently more games. The first is how safe she is due to her passive and overall defensive kit. This means that she can make more mistakes and still not be punished too hard for it. The other thing that helps her out is how macro play tends to involve 5 people grouping down mid lane at lower levels of play, so Anivia can easily stall the game out until she reaches enough items to solo carry. The problem with Anivia in high elo is the mid meta is very skirmish and rotation heavy. Anivia isn't able to keep up with the high movement based playstyle of mid lane currently, as she isn't good at pressuring towers when people roam, nor is she good at actually following roams because her base movement speed is just terrible. This means that at high elo, Anivia kinda has to pray that her side lanes don't fall too hard, so that way she can actually stall the game properly without people just wanting to FF and go next. Our next question is a Facebook question from Nate Trace, who says, Shaco is the same tier as Lee Sin, Sejuani, and Kayn. Are you people mentally functional? I'd like to think we're mentally functional, but me in particular, I think I'm a little bit off the wall, but in a, fun, quirky kind of way, along with the fact that, the whole mental capacity to hit Challenger every season on 4 rolls. Yeah, I know, odd flex, I get it, but it's applicable here, alright? As for the first part of the question, yeah, Shaco, Lee Sin, and Kayn are all around the 48 to 50% win rate marker for all ranks. Though we don't take just win rates into consideration, all these champions have a good enough play rate that the stats are pretty reliable. I'm aware that Shaco has bugs right now, and that Shaco mains claim he's the worst champion in the game and should not be compared to popular picks like Kayn and Lee Sin, but facts are Lee Sin and Kayn are popular because they're fun, just like Ezreal and Lucian. They're not popular because they're super good in solo queue at a low level of play, they're popular because they're just fun. They don't win that much, especially when piloted by the average player. Just because a champion is popular does not mean it is actually strong, though it may warp your perception of its strength. In terms of numbers, Shaco is a B tier champion. Despite how bad he currently feels to play and how much worse he is compared to the past, he still wins just as much as Kayn and way more than Lee Sin and Sejuani. Now imagine how strong this champion is when he isn't super buggy. Our last comment comes from aka Larry on Twitter, who says Kate deserved better Pepe hands. If you were talking about Kate, our social media person, I would agree, she does deserve better and a raise. But as for Caitlyn the champion, she definitely is not deserving of a better ranking, or anything else for that matter. I don't think anyone actually likes when she's strong outside of K players themselves, because the perma-pushing long-range tower hitting with traps in the blind spot laning pattern is super boring for the other 3 players in the lane. I'm always thankful when she is in meta, just because it's the worst thing ever watching your bot lane lose tower at 4 minutes just because they have a bad matchup. Alright, YouTube comments, don't let me down on this one. Put in the comment section if you actually like laning against Caitlyn or playing with Caitlyn at all. Thanks for watching our tier list update and Q&A video for patch 9.15. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or go to our Discord server in the link provided where you can ping me in our tier list discussion channel. Don't forget to try out Mobalytics today at mobalytics.gg, and I'll see you summoners out on the Rift.